right down to business. So I'm going to call to order the special city council meeting for October 26th at 5:06 p.m. The first item on the agenda is the agenda. Do we have Councilor Jang on board? Councilor Jang, are you able to please make a motion on the agenda? You're on mute, Councilor Jang.
Sorry. Yes, I would like to make the motion, adopt the agenda as presented, but yes, and wanted to also make an amendment.
Okay, go ahead.
Yep, to the agenda so that we can take the deliverable. We weigh on that first before we talk about the other items.
Okay, so your intention would be to have the resolution come first and then the report from the clerk treasurer's office after the fact. Is that correct, Councilor Jang?
Yes,
okay.
President Tracy. And
right,
the reason being we have a meeting at 5:30 as well.
Okay, understood. All right, great. So was that a second, Councilor Pine? Yep, second from Councilor Pine. All those in favor of our agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously, and we have our agenda. I'm going to go now to the public forum inbox, which I do not see any folks who have signed up to using that form for the public forum. People are able to sign up using the link to burlingtonvt.gov/citycouncil/public forum. So I'll give just 1 minute in case folks wanted to sign up. Actually, seeing that there are only a few attendees, are any of the attendees interested in speaking in public forum? If so, please just use the raise hand function. And that's probably the easiest way. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public forum. We will now move into the deliberative agenda, which includes a resolution regarding fair elections and transition of power. Councilor Hightower, may I please have a motion on the resolution?
Yeah, I'd like to waive the reading and adopt the resolution. I'd like the floor back after a second.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilor Hightower. Is there a second?
Point of information.
Yep, go ahead, Councilor Hanson.
Is that the Councilor Hightower? Is that the revised or the original that you're moving?
Yes, if we could do the revised version of, let me make sure I'm opening it now. Yep, the revised version of the fair elections and peaceful transfer of power.
Okay, is that clear, Councilor Hanson? And are others clear on what Councilor Hightower has just moved? Okay, understanding that, is there a second to the motion? Second from Councilor Paul. Councilor Hightower, you have the floor.
Great, and I won't be long. I think just a lot of us have probably been part of conversations regarding this year's elections. We've had some problems with voter suppression in years past. That's been growing. I think this year in particular is of concern. But it would be, yeah, and so we had a conversation with some other folks that this is probably something we should be flagging and that should be in front of the council, but also that we should be reminding our voters of that this may be an unusual election year. And I really hope that this will be a nonpartisan resolution. I think it's fairly straightforward and something we should all be aspiring to.
Thank you, Councilor Hightower. I have Councilor Hanson in the queue, and if others like to get in, please let me know. Go ahead, Councilor Hanson.
Great, yeah, and thanks to Councilor Hightower for getting this submitted. I too think this is really important, and I think it goes even a step further than voter suppression. I think, voter suppression is a huge issue and really has been since the founding of this country. But I think something that is somewhat unique to this election that's even potentially more concerning than that is the president sort of indicating ambiguity around whether or not he would actually commit to the peaceful transfer of power if he were to lose the election. And I think that needs to be raising alarm bells for all of us. And, you know, whether we're in elected office or not, I think everyone needs to be eyes wide open about the fact that if there's any uncertainty around who won the election, or even potentially if it's pretty clear that Biden won the election, it's not a guarantee that Trump is going to step down and concede. And so I think it's really important that we're all aware of that and starting to prepare to respond if in that event.
Thank you, Councilor Hanson. Any other councilors wishing to comment on the resolution? Councilor Mason and then Councilor Pine. Go ahead, Councilor Mason.
With your permission, President Tracy, I want to ask maybe a question of the maker or of anyone. I hear and I am sensitive, and we're all maybe have the same anxieties about what it means, but it's uncertain to me in the last resolve clause what exactly is being alluded to or referred to from a transition of power. I don't mean to undersell, but you know, we're just the city of Burlington, and I don't think there's a right answer, but I'm not sure what the maker had envisioned as you were sort of thinking of maybe effectuating that last resolve clause. And I'm not asking because I have an answer. I'm actually asking because I just don't know what that looks like or what that feels like. So, and I did get a couple of questions from constituents asking the same question, and I did not have an adequate answer.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's still a little. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. You're good.
Thank you, Councilor Mason and President Tracy. I think it's still a little bit unclear, and I'd welcome others to jump on this because I think it depends on what it looks like in terms of what happens and what reasons are being given for being unwilling to transfer power peacefully. I'm sure there'll be some kind of legal argument that will be made, correct or incorrect. And so I definitely think it may just be statements. It may just be another council statement saying something. Maybe it will be, I'm not 100% sure yet. I know that everyone from corporations to civil society organizations to local governments will have to do something if that happens. What that is, I think people are still discussing and talking through, and I wouldn't claim to be an expert on those actions, but I think we will be called to do something.
All set, Councilor Mason?
Yes, thank you. And I mean, now to sort of comment, I will be supporting this. Thank you for bringing this forward, Councilor Hightower. I was asking also from the perspective of things we should be preparing, I guess, and instead of reacting, because I am optimistic it will not be chaotic, but if it is, it is. And I'm just thinking through, I guess, if any of us have things that we should be thinking or doing leading into Tuesday's election, you know, I'd rather be prepared than responsive. So thank you for bringing this forward, Councilor Hightower, and I will be supporting this.
I do give one more statement to that answer.
Sure, go ahead.
Sorry, briefly. I know one of the things that's being discussed is a general strike, and I think we should be ready to support that, especially on the part of any City of Burlington workers specifically.
Great. Thank you for that, Councilor Hightower. All right, I have Councilor Pine to be followed by Councilor Jeng. Go ahead, Councilor Pine.
Thanks, Mr. President. And I do support this resolution, the spirit and the actual wording of it. I share, and I think we hopefully all share, the commitment to fair, free, and open elections as a bedrock to our democracy. I think that the general strike was something I was going to mention, so that was just mentioned. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here, but you want to be prepared as well. I mean, it really is hope for the best, plan for the worst, right? So I would like to also highlight in the discussion of voter suppression that I believe Vermont, under this Secretary of State, is a national example of how to actually make voting as accessible as it possibly can be. I think it's pretty remarkable what has happened in our state. So I just want to call that out because I think Vermont is a shining example for how to remove barriers for people to be able to vote. And I really appreciate what has happened in Vermont around that. And I want to congratulate our city clerk treasurer's staff for being the local folks to make that happen. The workload for them, I know they've had to bring in extra people. This is what democracy looks like. It's really inspiring to see and to hear about the staff and what they've done to rally to make this happen. Amy Bovey deserves a huge call out here, because the amount of extra work that she and all of the staff, but Amy especially, has taken on with, I think, an incredible amount of grace and professionalism, speaks really well for our city. So thanks a lot.
Thank you for those comments, Councilor. Councilor Jang.
Thank you, President Tracy. And I wanted to also echo that Amy is just amazing, as well as Catherine Chad. And now I have questions for them. I know they said they shared a link to the full council about how voters can find out if their ballots has been received, and was just wondering if there is a way for also voters, a citizen of the city, to know that their ballot also has been counted, received and counted. Is there any way of finding out? And this is a question for both Amy and Catherine, if they can answer it.
Okay, great. Would one of you like to address that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So any voter who is registered in the state of Vermont can log into their My Voter page and see the status of their ballot. If the ballot is marked as having been received, that means we've both gotten it and that it will be counted. If we've gotten it and certain instructions weren't followed, such as them failing to sign it, or it's not in the certificate envelope, it would be labeled as defective. So that would mean we got it, but unfortunately are not able to count it. So a voter can tell by looking at their My Voter page.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Sure.
And yes, I look forward also to support this resolution and vote in support of it. But at the same time, it feels as if personally, just whatever is happening in the nation, and we want to boil it down to the small municipality, but I think it's better safe than sorry. And I think attempting to impede the vote or intimidation of voters, you will be apprehended and referred for persecution is a very clear language. But thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jang. I have Councilor Paul.
Thank you. I would support this and appreciate the time that went into putting this together. Thank you to Councilor Hightower. The only thing that I would just simply add is that for those councilors that have not been on the council for a considerable length of time, this is the kind of resolution that should be sponsored by the full council. There is nothing controversial about this. This is something that we all agree to. This is something that we should all have been extended the ability and the specific request to be sponsors. It is much more meaningful, this kind of a resolution, if it is sponsored by the full council, and there's really no reason for it not to be. So I appreciate the resolution. I would just simply say that when we do as a council these kinds of resolutions that are really in the public interest, to congratulate a sports team for winning us a great season, to support democracy, which I think we all support democracy, regardless of party. These are the kinds of things that we do together. So thank you.
Okay, I don't have anyone else in the queue. Any further comments from councilors? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much, councilors. Our next item on the agenda is an update from the clerk treasurer's office, which we sort of started to get a little bit into in the debate with Councilor Jing's helpful question. And so just want to turn it over and to Amy and Catherine. But before doing so, just again, want to thank both of you for all of your work in helping us to get this meeting together. But then also just throughout this election cycle, it bears mentioning that this is your third election that you've had to manage of this particular year, which is a challenge, but has only been exacerbated by the increase in mail-in voting, and you've done so really, really incredibly well, and I just want to thank you for that. So I'll turn it over to you to share an update on where things are and how things have gone thus far, as well as to share some just tips for folks in the next couple days if they're looking to vote, or on election day what they can expect at the polling places.
Great, thanks, President Tracy. So I do have just some basic information prepared based on some of the questions you'd asked earlier in the day, and I'm happy to talk to anything else that might be on folks' minds. So as you all know, this year the state of Vermont decided to mail absentee ballots to all active registered voters automatically. Here in Burlington, we've sent out 26,589. So a huge number of ballots, definitely never had to manage that kind of number before. So far, we've received just over 14,000 of those back. So a little over half of Burlingtonians have voted already, which is great to see. You had asked about if we've been seeing any problems. In the primary, there were higher numbers of defective ballots than we like to see. In the primary, that was about 6% of ballots were defective. That's when a voter doesn't follow a certain instruction. Most commonly, it's failing to sign their envelope or failing to put the ballot in the envelope. Very happy to report that those numbers are significantly lower for this general election. Less than 1% of ballots have been defective. There has been a lot of public outreach about this, and we also took an extra step of adding a separate instruction sheet in all of the envelopes to call that to voters' attention, in a second place. So happy to see that that seems to be working. So at this point, many voters probably still have their ballots wanting to turn them in. We have 3 24/7 drop boxes available throughout the city, one outside of City Hall on Main Street, and 2 others, one in front of the Public Works building on Pine Street, and the back of Fire Station number 2 on the corner of North Avenue and Strong Street. We've seen a lot of folks utilizing them already, which is great to see. We empty them out twice a day, so folks should feel confident putting their ballot in there that we'll get it quickly and it will be taken back to the office and counted. Voters who haven't gotten a ballot still do have some options for voting. It's getting a little late in the game. We can try mailing a ballot, but would probably recommend folks either come during our open office hours. We have one in-person office session available Monday morning. We'll be open from 8 to 12:30 for folks to come in if they need to clear up any last minute issues. And they can, of course, always vote at their polling place on election day. Polls will be open as usual from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And so we will have polling places open. As I mentioned, we've worked really closely to provide training to our election workers about what to expect on election day. Had a training session Monday night that was very well attended. And I feel the workers are well prepared for what to expect. And we worked closely with the Secretary of State's office and Department of Health to develop various COVID safety protocols. For the most part, this will be similar to what voters experienced in August during the primary, but everyone will be required to wear masks. We've reconfigured all polling places to have a one-way traffic flow. Voters will be given single-use golf pencils rather than shared pens to use throughout the day, and there'll be frequent cleaning of all touch points and surfaces. So that was the majority of what I had prepared, and would be happy to answer questions for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. I have Councilor Pine to be followed. Okay.
Sorry, just
Yeah,
two things, two quick things that Amy, you may have forgotten. One is we also have a drop box at the Miller Center in the new North End. It is not 24/7, but it is Monday through Friday, 9 to 3. And so we are pleased to offer that as well for folks in that part of town. And also just for the in-person voting, I also just want to thank Amy and her team and all of the volunteers that come out to help. There were some lessons learned from August, and so we are certainly implementing them and really trying to get creative. We have been working with Zach from City Arts, because he's great at planning events. And how do we improve traffic flow? Voters will notice there will be tents set up at some of the polling places so that workers can utilize some of that outdoor space to make things safer. So we are unfortunately getting the hang of doing elections in COVID. So things went fairly well for us in August, but we're just trying to build on that. And I think those are all the clarifications I had. We're happy to answer your questions.
Awesome, great. So I had Councilor Pine to be followed by Councilor Carpenter. Go ahead, Councilor Pine.
Thanks, Mr. President. My first was the reminder about Miller Center, because I was pretty sure there was a fourth box, but that's great. Second is a question about past presidential election turnout. What do we expect? I think it's 18 or 20, somewhere in that range, but I just want to find out. And how late can voters keep dropping the ballots in these drop boxes? And when does the deadline hit for things like bringing it into City Hall versus bringing it to your polling place?
Yeah, all great questions. So in the 2016 general election, we had about 19,000 voters vote. So at a little over 14,000, we are well on our way to that target. I think it's likely we'll exceed that as we continue to get ballots throughout the week. And some folks, of course, will vote in person. And the drop boxes will be available until 4:30 p.m. on Monday. After that, a voter would need to hand deliver the ballot to their polling place.
Councilor Pine, you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you. And not be able to bring it to City Hall on election day, right? Just to their polling place? Is that
correct?
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for everything.
Great, I got Councilor Carpenter.
Actually, those were my questions too. Will you, Amy, or the city be putting out some more press about that? I think particularly the 4:30 deadline for the drop box versus then you got to bring it to the polling place the next day. And I worry if people will dash out at 9 o'clock on Monday and drop it in the box and think it's okay. Will the boxes actually be disabled, for lack of a better way to say it, on Monday afternoon?
Yeah, I can let Catherine chime in on the outreach piece a little bit, but we do have a means of blocking the boxes off. It'll have a block in the slot that says that the kiosk is closed, and we plan to hang signs on the boxes saying ballots must be delivered to the polling place.
Yes, we are working with the mayor's office to continue to get the word out. We appreciate everything you can do because I feel like in some ways it's like the USPS messaging I've been hearing. It was like, get your ballot in the mail, get your ballot in the mail. Do not put your ballot in the mail, because was the 1-day deadline, and we're sort of doing the same thing. And so now we're like, don't put your ballot in the mail, put it in the drop box, but only until Monday at 4:30. And so I think we'll start to get that word out now. And then, yes, it will be, we will make sure that the ballot boxes are disabled. And as always, there will be clear signage so that people know their next step is just to go to their polling place the next day.
All set, Councilor Carpenter?
Yes.
Okay, Councilor Paul, go ahead.
Thanks very much. So I have two questions for Amy. The first is, thank you very much for the Zoom meeting that you had for the poll workers. I had no idea that it was going to be citywide when I got on there. And it was, I don't know how many people were on that call, but I have a feeling that there were a lot. And there were a lot of really good questions. So that was, I think, extremely helpful for everyone to hear all the questions. I have had people who have asked me how, if you're trying to reduce the number of people that are coming into a polling place, there are a couple of people that have reached out to me and said, if it's a miserable day, am I going to vote and I'm standing outside in the rain voting? Can I go inside? Can I not go inside? If I have an absentee ballot for relatives, can I take those in? on their behalf if they can't get there. And so I realized that you went over all of this the other day, but it probably would be helpful just so that we could all hear that. That's my first question, a long first question. And then the second is, Amy, hope you won't feel that all the kudos on you lessen the insincerity of the message, but you are amazing. You've done an amazing job with this. Nothing seems to rattle you, and I'm sure it does maybe when you get home, but we don't see it. And you really have done an amazing job with this. The question that I have is there anything that we can do for you? Those are my questions.
Sure. Thank you, Karen. That's very nice of you. We have asked that each polling place designate a person or a few people to be stationed right at the door, either just inside or just outside, depending on the weather. That will allow folks who are not comfortable going inside to simply hand off their voted ballot and be on their way. At some of our smaller, physically smaller polling locations, we will be putting tents up outside. We understand that there are physical limitations that won't allow for long lines to be forming indoors. So we have added that extra layer of shelter for some of the smaller locations to give a little protection if folks do have to wait outside for what will hopefully be a brief period of time. So those options are available. And as far as, what you all can do, I have appreciated the support. You're very kind. I'd say just get the word out to folks to turn in their ballot, the sooner the better. That's great. And just encourage folks to vote. We're excited to see such great participation.
President Tracy, I did have actually one other question, just so that just to verify. I know that at one point, Amy, you had told me that starting, I think it was a couple of weeks in advance, that you had gotten permission from the Secretary of State's office, given the fact that you've got 14,000 ballots, to already start feeding them into machines. And I just wondered if you could just for the community, just so that they understand, and and that will probably be the difference between being able to get results at a reasonable hour versus not. So perhaps if you could just speak to that.
Of course, yes. The Secretary of State's office issued a directive allowing town clerks to begin processing ballots 30 days in advance of the election. We did take advantage of that before the state primary and have been doing so again this time. So far, each ward has come in with a team of 4 volunteers for 2 sessions, and the majority of those 14,000 ballots have actually already gone through the tabulators. We'll be continuing those sessions through the weekend to get a head start on making sure that they are counted in a timely manner. Processing absentee ballots is one of the most time-consuming tasks on election day. So without this provision, I think you're correct. It would be a very late night and into the next morning before we had our results.
Great. Thank you. Thanks again.
Sure.
Any other questions from councilors? Okay, seeing none, very much appreciate all these questions and all these great answers, as well as the hard work. That now completes our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
The motion to adjourn moved by Councilor Hightower, seconded by Councilor Stromberg. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned at 5:34. Thank you very much, councilors, and thank you to the clerk's office for all your hard work. We'll see you.